Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host, Alyson, and without further ado, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Bookish Babbles. Today we're talking about chapters 4 to 16 of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snake. And before we get started, I just want to take a moment to say that if there's anyone listening that's either in Ukraine or has family in Ukraine, I'm genuinely so sorry for everything that's happening. I can't even begin to imagine what you guys are going through. And I'm not here to comment on the situation or give my 2 cents because I'm just a podcaster who talks about fictional characters. I don't have the background to give educated commentary on the situation. It's just that on the chance that someone who has been directly affected by the situation is listening, I just want you to know that we're all rooting for you. This really sucks, but also, you guys, the citizens of Ukraine, you guys are badasses. Holy crap, your response has been amazing. I'm just so sorry you have to go through all that. But yeah, there's no smooth way to transition from that to my regular content, so I'm just gonna start the recap from last week. So last week in the book that we're reading, Coriolanus learns that his father and Highbottom used to be friends. Shocker. Lucy Gray debuts in Epic Song on interview night. Coriolanus gives Lucy Gray his mother's compact as a parting gift and also tells her to put rat poison in it, and they kiss. The 10th Hunger Games are about to begin, and also the Capitol thought it would be cute to hang Marcus over the arena, and it's still alive, mind you. So with all that being said, let's dive into Chapter 14. Alright, so where we left off, Lucky announces that the 10th Hunger Games are about to begin. The tributes are all lined up, waiting for the gong to sound. And like I said, Marcus is currently dangling over the arena, still alive, as punishment for trying to escape. Because, not enough just to throw him back into the arena to fight to the death. No, they really have to make him suffer. Then again, maybe the Capitol did that on purpose because they know otherwise Marcus's odds of winning are pretty good, so they don't want the victor to be someone who defied them and escaped during the bombing because, bad luck for them. But still, horrifying and a bit overkill. It even makes Coriolanus feel queasy, so that's when you know you done goofed. And in the first paragraph it says, Coriolanus felt ill but incapable of looking away. It would have been horrifying to see any creature displayed this way, a dog, a monkey, a rat even, but a boy? And a boy whose only real crime had been to run for his life. Had Marcus gone on a killing spree through the capital, it would have been one thing, but no such reports had followed in the wake of his escape. Coriolanus flashed back to the funeral parades. The grisliest exhibits, brandy dangling from a hook and the tributes being dragged through the streets, had been reserved for the dead. The Hunger Games themselves had the twisted brilliance of pitting district child against district child, so the Capitol kept its hands clean of actual violence. There was no precedent for Marcus's torture. Under Dr. Gaul's guidance, the Capitol had reached a new level of retaliation. So yeah, if Coriolanus can see how horrifying it is, it's awful. And needless to say that the party atmosphere that was there a moment ago has now died down. So there aren't any microphones in the interior of the arena, so they can't hear what Marcus is saying. But the camera lingers on Marcus for a moment, for an uncomfortable amount of time, and Corio and probably the whole audience just wants the gong to sound and to cut away from, the horrible display. Sejanus takes it even worse. He's shaking with rage. Before Coriolanus can do anything to calm him down, Sejanus gets out of his seat, throws a chair at the screen and screams, "You're all monsters," and runs out of the room, and no one makes a move to stop him because I think they're all too stunned. So after that, the gong sounds. Most of the tributes run away. Lucy Gray is seen running toward the far side of the arena. Tanner, Coral, and Jessup grab weapons and disperse. Reaper grabs a pitchfork and he's ready to engage, but everyone else has already run away. So he climbs into a nearby stand and just starts hunting for other tributes. This is very different from the bloodbaths that we kind of got used to seeing in the 74th and 5th games, where, quite a few tributes did die within the first few minutes. Like, if I remember correctly, I think almost half the tributes died in the bloodbath during the 74th games, but we'll get there soon enough. So with a fairly anticlimactic bloodbath, Lucky then, plugs the betting system again, and the camera pans back to the arena. Overall, fairly uneventful. For a while, Reaper's the only one seen. When he ducks out of sight, Marcus is then left to be the focus. Lysistrata asks Coriolanus if he should go after Sejanus, but he says no, because Sejanus probably wants to be alone. Though I think we all know the truth is he wants to keep watching Lucy Gray, and because he also doesn't want to trigger a reaction from Gaul, and he's starting to think that, being perceived as Sejanus' friend will be a problem. Oh, I promise later tonight, spoiler alert, it will be a huge problem, Corio. Good luck. Half an hour passes. Cameras show the main gate, which had been blown up by the bombs during the earlier attack, and it's now covered by like a makeshift barricade made of planks, concrete slabs, and barbed wire. And then a tribute appears. Who is it? It's Pup's tribute, 15-year-old Lamina from District 7. She hadn't participated in interview nights, so no one had really taken note of her. She takes a knife and an axe from the weapons pile, which honestly is a good time to do so good thinking, Lamina. Then she climbs one of the poles. When she reaches the top, she walks across the beam over to Marcus, briefly talks to him. Again, no one hears what they're saying because there are no microphones nearby. And then she mercy kills him, though it takes a couple whacks of her axe to do it, which is horrifying to think of. And then after she does that, Pup almost immediately gets a sponsor gift for Lamina. And this makes Coriolanus uneasy and puts him on edge, because, before he thought he knew all the tributes who were the most immediate threat to Lucy Gray, but nope, Lamina just proved that she's a contender. And he has a line on page 210 where he says, "The Hunger Games felt more fluid, more changeful than he had prepared for." And again, if there's anything we know about Coriolanus, I'll keep saying it every episode probably, is that he hates not having control, so this is driving him crazy. Also, side note, Lamina is kind of paralleling Joanna Mason at this moment. This may be a stretch, but I just can't help but notice it. So again, it's just another case of the female tribute from District 7. She's initially underestimated she's underestimated and written off as being, weak and not a threat, but then in the arena proves that she's a threat. Unfortunately for Lamina, spoiler alert, it won't work out for her, but it's still an interesting comparison. So then Pup sends the first sponsor gifts to Lamina, and because, she's up on the pole, so it's the perfect spot to send it in. So 5 minutes pass before a drone with the water appears, and it doesn't go smoothly because, the drone crashes into the crossbeam 10 feet away from Lamina, and it falls to the ground and shatters. Pup complains, whines someone paid good money for that, and the audience kind of agrees. So 10 minutes later, a replacement is delivered, and this time it is successful, so yay. I kind of like the idea of how the first time the Capitol does this, they struggle, things don't go according to plan, because obviously by Katniss's time they have it down to a science and everything goes almost according to plan, until Katniss pulls out the berries, but we'll get there. So because of the slow start, Lucky is kind of struggling a bit to host, because again, things are kind of uneventful, and Corio even notes that, most of the competitive tributes, basically from 1 and 2, would have helped cause some kind of bloodbath in the beginning, but that didn't happen this year. And it is kind of interesting to view the games from the outside, because with the original series, we were just so used to being in Katniss's head all the time, and we always had that feeling of being like on edge in the arena, or at least I was for one reading it. But here, I don't know, it feels more choppy. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but it just feels different because watching the games from the outside with Coriolanus and the other mentors, we can kind of turn away from the screen and the arena and go back to their regular day-to-day life, whereas when we're with Katniss in the arena, like, the real world feels more like surreal and far away and removed because it's like just the arena. That's all we're focusing on. So anyway, so to help Lucky, Lepidus is in Heavensby Hall. He pulls Pup aside to interview because, everyone's like, ooh, District 7 tribute, she's pretty cool. There are only a couple of tributes that are seen throughout the day, so the cameras shift their attention to the crowd that's gathered outside the arena. A concession stand has been set up to sell snacks. There's a pair of dogs dressed up as Lucy Gray and Jessup. Coriolanus initially doesn't really like that, but then decides, there's no bad press since he got more sponsor gifts as a result. But when the dogs go home, things are boring again. At 5 o'clock, Lucky introduces Gaul to the audience. He's a bit frazzled because, like I said, it's hard for him to host full-time when there isn't really anything going on. He asks Gaul why things are so slow, where are the tributes, and Gaul reminds him that, with the recent bombing, there are new hiding places available to the tributes. They can now access the tunnels inside the wall, so the games can last indefinitely, especially since people can send food to the tributes, and eventually the tributes will poke their heads out when they're hungry, so no worries, we'll be seeing them again soon. Alright, so at 7 o'clock, dinner is served, and this is another reason for Coriolanus to keep Lucy Gray alive so he can keep having access to good food. He and Lysistrata talk about how they're going to deliver the sponsor gifts to Jessup and Lucy Gray without giving away their location, but there's no real way to do that, though, since they don't know where they are, and it might, like I said, they don't want to give away the location to other tributes, because this isn't like Katniss's arena was, like, really big, and there's so many forests around here. It's just, one arena that's more contained and kind of feels, like, more intimate. Like, this arena sounds a lot more scary. I'd rather be in Katniss's arena than this one, although, ultimately, I wouldn't want to be in any arena, so, moving on. So then the two from District 3 make an appearance. It looks like they decided to ally. They examine the broken drone, and they do something because they get a light to blink, but we don't know what they did or what they're thinking. And then Reaper appears, so the two of them retreat. Reaper doesn't move to attack them, though. He's carrying Dill, his district partner, and she doesn't look so good because she's literally coughing up blood. And Lysistrata is sure that Dill has tuberculosis, and that's a big deal because in the capital, tuberculosis is currently managed as a chronic condition. So in the districts, it's essentially a death sentence because they have a shit healthcare plan. Reaper gives her a comforting pat and leaves. Though interesting because I don't know, Reaper earlier he promised to kill everyone, apologize for it, but I guess he can't do it to someone from his own district. And I don't know, I wonder, because earlier in the book, Dill claims that Reaper had killed a peacekeeper back home and, gave us this idea that he was a stone cold killer, I guess. But I don't know, I wonder how much truth there is to that. No, Reaper's backstory is probably really interesting, but unfortunately we'll probably never know. Anyway, moving on. So, meanwhile, Clemencia, she isn't acting like herself. She doesn't send Reaper food, even though he's right there. It's the perfect time to send in a sponsor gift, but he didn't, quote-unquote, earn it because he didn't kill Dill. So Felix sends Dill some water, but Treach from 7 takes it and runs. Rude. After a while, the sun sets. Dill finally dies, which, symbolic. Good timing, Dill. Pass away with the sunset. Felix gets one more interview with Lepidus, who praises him for, his good work at getting Dill as far as he did, although the praise is likely because Felix is the grandnephew of the president. Lucky says goodnight to everyone. Mentors are dismissed for the night. Coriolanus thinks of Lucy Gray as he walks home, and he's worried because he's realizing that her songbird persona is less impressive in the arena. And of course, no one knows about the rat poison, so they don't know she's a contender in that sense. When he gets home, Coriolanus can smell jasmine tea, meaning there's a visitor, and it's Mrs. Plinth. She tells them that Sejanus is missing, which is really concerning because no one's seen him since his outburst at the beginning of the games. Tigress asks if there's some place or someone Sejanus would go to. No, because according to Mrs. Plinth, Coriolanus is his only friend, which is really sad. You need better friends, Sejanus. And Coriolanus suggests that it's possible that Sejanus is already home. Mrs. Plinth agrees and starts to leave, but as she looks at the TV screen, which is in their living room, which is currently broadcasting the games, and Sejanus is in the arena. So with that cliffhanger, it's the end of the chapter and time for a break. We'll cover all that insanity that happens when we come back. And we're back, and I just want to start out by saying, what the fuck, Sejanus? How'd you get in there? And more importantly, why? I feel like his mom probably, stress levels just went up. Anyway, so Sejanus is currently laying out Marcus's body and sprinkling something on it, like he did with Brandy after she got shot at the zoo. Mrs. Plinth reveals that sprinkling breadcrumbs in a body is a tradition back in Chew, so that the person has food on their journey to the afterlife or whatever. And I kind of like these little moments of world building where we learn details about each district, because we know they're kept isolated from each other, so each district has their own culture and traditions. Coriolanus doesn't appreciate the tradition, thinks it's a waste of food. Kind of understandable given that he's been struggling with starvation for so long, but, rude. Respect other cultures, dude. Then the phone rings, and because it's Gaul, because who else? Corio knows that Gaul will want him to come down, and he does delay for a while and denies that he and Sejanus are friends, saying that they're more acquaintances. But that plan doesn't work because Mrs. Plinth is literally right there. So Gaul tells Corio to bring Mrs. Plinth to the arena and to be there in 20 minutes, and she threatens him with another demerit and says she'll take away any chance he has at an Academy prize. So Mrs. Plinth is obviously very worried and concerned that Sejanus will be in trouble with the capital. Coriolanus finds it odd that she's more worried about that than the arena full of tributes who can, unalive her son. But then again, she's seen what the capital did to Marcus, so maybe it's worse to be in trouble with the capital than the tributes. So Coriolanus and Mrs. Plinth get into the Plinth car. Mrs. Plinth starts chatting. I'm kind of guessing this is her way of coping with a stressful situation. At least that's how I read the scene. But Coriolanus doesn't appreciate it. He's having a hard time staying polite since Sejanus' actions are putting his future on the line, and he also mentally judges her for her parenting because, look at where her son is now. In this scene, we learn that Mrs. Plinth also didn't want to move to the capital, and Corio also judges her for that too. On page 226, his thoughts go like this. What was it? Gonna start that over. What was it with the Plinths anyway, to be constantly turning advantage into tragedy? You needed only to take a cursory glance at the interior of this car, the tooled leather, the upholstered seats, the bar with its crystal bottles of gem-colored liquids to know they were among the most fortunate people in Panem. And not to bring up the saying, money can't buy happiness, but there is, because it's cliche, but there is some truth to it, because Sejanus and his mother, they have any material thing they could want, but they're not happy. Now, to be clear, money can definitely help with things, money can pay for therapy, which is very helpful. Money can pay for life-saving surgery, which I imagine would make someone very, very happy, but, money can solve some problems, but, in the Plinths is, I can't, in the case of the Plinths, it's so hard to say the plural with the Plinths because, Anyway, but in the case of the Plinths, it can't cause their kind of root problem, which is that Sejanus and his mom can't be happy in a place that, treats people so poorly, because they're very empathetic people. Also doesn't help that they have no friends and don't really have a strong support system around them. Like, Mrs. Plinth even says that all her friends and family have cut them off when they moved to the capital. But Mr. Plinth thought it was more important to move them there because, if they became capital citizens, then Sejanus would be safe from the reaping. And oh, the irony in that. All that to say, I feel really bad for the Plinths. So they know that Mrs. Plinth will probably be expected to help lure Sejanus out in some way, but she tells Corio she's not exactly sure if she'll be able to because, she knows her son will only come out if he thinks that it's the right thing to do. And after she shares this, Coriolanus has kind of an interesting paragraph of thoughts on page 227. The right thing to do. Coriolanus realized that this was what had always defined Sejanus' actions. His determination to do the right thing. That insistence, the way, for instance, he would defy Dr. Gaul when the rest of them were just trying to get by, was another reason he alienated people. Frankly, he could be insufferable with those superior little comments of his, but playing on that might be the way to manipulate him. I like this passage. I think it's a good example of how Coriolanus is good at reading people and just being able to figure out how to manipulate them, which will of course become very useful in his political career. So when Coriolanus and Mrs. Plinth get to the arena, they gather in a Capitol news van that's just parked right outside. Gaul and Highbottom and a few peacekeepers are there, and in the van there's a split screen, one showing the actual footage and one showing a darkened version that's being broadcasted because, obviously they need to cover up the fact that a Capitol teenager broke in to the arena because it's a bad look for them. Sejanus is just sitting there by Marcus's body, and they start discussing ways to get Sejanus out. When they suggest sending in peacekeepers, they determine that it's too risky because they'll probably scare Sejanus away, so it's best to have someone that he trusts to go in there and convince him to come out. And the only two people he trusts are his mother and Coriolanus. Corio asked if they should give Mrs. Plinth a bullhorn or something so she can call out to Sejanus from a safe distance and they can remove that audio from the broadcast. Unfortunately, that would also be alerting Sejanus' presence to the other tributes. So the best thing they can do is send Corio in to get Sejanus out. Mrs. Plinth, being a good mother, volunteers to go in instead, but she doesn't exactly inspire confidence to go on a stealth mission. So, of the two of them, Coriolanus is the one who can make a run for it. So, as much as he doesn't want to go in, Corio kind of accepts defeat and gets ready to go in because, once Gaul decides he's going in, there isn't really anything he can do to stop it. This woman's insane. Peacekeepers give Corio body armor, pepper spray, and a flash unit so he can temporarily blind someone. When he asks for a weapon, they decline because he's not trained to use one. Corio's also given a token so he can enter the arena, and he kind of realizes this is the place where Sejanus must have gotten in. So I'm going to start reading on page 230, so start with Coriolanus when he says, "So he had a token?" asked Coriolanus. "He had a token," confirmed an old peacekeeper who seemed to be in a command. "Caught us off guard. We're not really looking for people breaking into the arena during the games, only out." He produced a token from his pocket. "This one's for you." Coriolanus turned the disc in his fingers, but made no move to the turnstiles. How did he think he'd get out?" "I don't think he did," said the peacekeeper. "And how will I get out?" asked Coriolanus. This plan seemed dicey at best. "There," the peacekeeper pointed to the bars. "We can pull back the barbed wire and tilt the bars forward, creating an opening big enough for you to crawl under." "You can do it that quickly?" he said doubtfully. "We've got you on camera. We'll start moving the bars when you're successfully bringing him out," the peacekeeper assured him. "And if I can't convince him to come out?" Coriolanus asked. "We have no instructions on that," the peacekeeper shrugged. "I guess you stay until the mission is accomplished." A cold sweat bathed Coriolanus' body as the words registered. He would not be allowed back out without Sejanus. He looked through the turnstile to the end of the passage where the barricade had been erected under the scoreboard. The one he'd seen Lamina, Kirk, and Tesley scampering in and out of earlier in the games. What about that? That's for show, really. It blocks the view of the lobby of the street. Can't put that on camera, the peacekeeper explained, but you won't have trouble getting through it. Then neither would the tributes, Coriolanus thought. He ran his thumb over the slick surface of the token. We've got you covered up to the barricade, the peacekeeper said. So you'll kill any tributes who attack me? Coriolanus clarified. Scare them off anyway, said the peacekeeper. Don't worry, we've got your back. Excellent, said Coriolanus, not at all convinced. He steeled himself and jammed the token into the slot, then pushed the metal arms. Enjoy the show, the turnstile reminded him, sounding 10 times louder in the stillness of the night. Yeah, way to up the stakes on the whole situation. Also, I really don't like these peacekeepers. Like, I know it's their job to quote-unquote follow orders or whatever, but you're telling me you won't let this kid out even if he couldn't save Sejanus? Like, we all know Gaul's a messed up person, but you guys are just as bad. Yeah, the peacekeepers, I'm pretty sure they don't have Coriolanus' back or his best interest in mind at all. Anyway, as he crawls through the makeshift barricade, Coriolanus discovers that the barbed wires are pretty flimsy and more meant to, block the view instead of trap the tributes. I know, this detail kind of got me thinking. So, the tributes ideally, could escape? They could work together to get out, but they don't. Now, granted, they probably don't know how flimsy the barricade is, but still, they all stay to play the Capitol's game. I don't know, just something to think about. Anyway, Coriolanus finds Sejanus still kneeling over Marcus's body. So far, the area around them looks deserted, so it's now or never to get Sejanus out. But Sejanus is clearly not okay. He starts rambling about bodies, ending with saying that he's not sure if he'd rather be buried or burned. Coriolanus uses that to say, yo, you don't have to decide now. And Sejanus then says he doesn't know what's taking the other tributes so long. So basically he admits that he wants the tributes to kill him. And he tells Corio to go. Then Coriolanus tries to tempt him to come out by telling him that, hey dude, your mom's waiting for you. Because I don't know why I have him saying dude. I can't picture Coriolanus ever saying dude. Anyway. Then Sejanus starts rambling about his mom, and I'm going to read what he says, because it says a lot about his relationship with his parents. So it starts with Sejanus saying, poor old Ma, she never wanted any of this, Not the money, not the move, not the fancy clothes or the driver. She just wanted to stay in too. But my father, bet he's here, isn't he? No, he'll keep his distance until this is settled. Then let the buying begin. Buying what? The breeze ruffled Coriolanus' hair and made hollow echoing sounds in the arena. This was taking too long, and Sejanus was making no effort to speak softly. Buy everything. He bought our way here, bought my schooling, bought my mentorship, and he goes nuts because he can't buy me, said Sejanus. He'll buy you if you let him, or at least compensate you for trying to help me. Buy away, thought Coriolanus, thinking of next year's tuition. So, again, Mr. Plint is trying to patch things up with money in hopes that, the right price will shape Sejanus into the son he wants. At least that's kind of how I read it, but he can't. And, again, it's really sad, the Plint's family dynamic. And Coriolanus then goes on to tell Sejanus that he's sorry, doesn't realize how hard this had all been for him, should have traded tributes, blah, 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 saying what he needs to get Sejanus to move. But Sejanus says there's no point, that's all that's left for him is to die to make a point, and he wants everyone to see it. And this is, of course, when Coriolanus tells him that no one will see it, because the screens have been darkened, and Gaul's broadcasting it in a way to cover up Sejanus' presence, and, if he dies here, it'll be for nothing. And he also reminds him that one day, Sejanus will be really rich because he'll inherit the Plint fortune. And it's been proven that money is power, so one day he can use that money to do some good. Oh, and they're also, being surrounded at this moment by some tributes, so, it's stressful. Sejanus agrees to leave, mostly to spite Gaul, which I respect. However, he doesn't want to leave Marcus, to which I say, why? I mean, I know why. I get it, Sejanus. You're a noble person. I respect that. But now is not the time. And we're going to read the last page. So Sejanus says he won't leave Marcus. Coriolanus makes a snap judgment. I'll get his feet. The legs were stiff and heavy, reeking of blood and filth, but he crooked the knees in his arm as best he could and hoisted Marcus's lower half. Sejanus encircled his chest with his arms, and they began to move, half carrying, half dragging the body toward the barricade. 10 yards, 5 yards, not far from now. Once they cleared it, the peacekeepers should provide some cover. He tripped on a rock and went down, driving his knife into something sharp and piercing, but sprang back up, heaving Marcus's body with him. Almost there, almost. The footsteps came from behind, quick and light, speeding from the barricade where the tributes had lain in wait. Coriolanus reflexively dropped Marcus and spun around just in time to see Bobbin bring down his knife. And with that, we have another cliffhanger, so naturally, it's the end of a chapter and time for another break. When we get back, we will talk about chapter 16, which is a lot to unpack. All right, we're back, and here to talk about chapter 16 and the last chapter for the day. And so we open on a pretty intense opening, so I'm just going to read you guys the first paragraph. So remember, Bobbin's about to kill Coriolanus. The blade glanced off his body armor and sliced his left upper arm. As Coriolanus leaped backward, he swung at Bobbin, but only encountered air. He landed in a pile of debris, old boards, and plaster as his hand searched for some kind of defense. Bobbin sprang at him again, aiming the knife at his face. Coriolanus's fingers closed around a 2x4, and he brought it up, catching Bobbin in the temple hard, sending him to his knees. And then he was on his feet, using the board like a club, bringing it down again and again without being sure where it made contact. So yeah, like I said, pretty brutal, and yes, Coriolanus just unalived Bobbin in a very harsh way. And this is now his first official kill of many, because we know over the years he poisons a lot of people. So Coriolanus and Sejanus leave Marcus behind now because Coral, Mizzen, and Tanner are chasing them, and they can't exactly get away and carry a dead body. Right, and their escape from the arena is pretty intense, so I'll just start the reading on page 238. The passageway wasn't long, but it seemed interminable. His legs rose and fell as if he were waist-high in glue, and black specks dotted his vision. Sejanus stayed steady at his elbow, but he could hear the tributes gaining. Something heavy and unyielding, a brick, clipped the side of his neck. Another object punctured his vest and stuck, bobbing behind him until it fell with a clank. Where was the cover, the protective gunfire from the peacekeepers? There was nothing at all, and the bars still stood flush with the floor. He wanted to scream for them to kill the tributes, shoot them dead in their tracks, but his breath was in too short supply. Someone heavy-footed shrank his lead to a few yards, but once again, remembering Professor Sickles' training, he didn't dare waste a second looking back to see who it was. Before him, the peacekeepers finally managed to tilt the unit of bars inward, achieving a gap of about 12 inches at the ground. Coriolanus dove, standing several layers of skin off his chin on the rough floor, and just getting his hand beneath the bars where the peacekeepers latched onto him and gave him a great yank. Lacking time to turn his head, the rest of his face scraped against the filthy surface until he reached safety. The guards dumped him immediately to retrieve Sejanus, who gave a sharp cry as Tanner's knife cut open the back of his calf before he slid out of range. The bars were slammed into place and bolts locked down the unit, but the tributes were undeterred. Tanner, Mizzen, and Coral jabbed their weapons through the bars at Coriolanus and Sejanus, spewing hate-filled taunts, while the peacekeepers banged on the turnstiles with their batons. Not a shot was fired, not even a shot of pepper spray. Coriolanus realized that they must have been under orders to leave the tributes untouched. As the peacekeepers helped him to his feet, he spat out in rage. "Thanks for having our backs! Just following orders. Don't blame us if Gaul thinks you're expandable, boy," said the old peacekeeper who promised him cover. So I think that's one of the most intense scenes in the whole book, and I can't wait to see it brought to life on screen. Like, I'm predicting it'll probably be one of the most memorable scenes in the movie. And the peacekeepers continue to suck because they didn't help them like they promised they would. Coriolanus even shouts profanities at them, and honestly, good for him. They are well-deserved profanities. So while they're outside waiting for the ambulance to come get them, Sejanus tries to apologize and for all the trouble Coriolanus had to go through in rescuing him, and even calls him Corio, and that pisses him off. There's a line in his thoughts at the top of page 240 that says, Corio was a nickname for old friends, for people Coriolanus loved. And this was the moment Sejanus decided to try it out. If he had had the energy, Coriolanus would have reached over and strangled him. So, violent much. And before there's time to linger on that, the ambulance comes to treat their wounds, and instead of being brought to the hospital, they're brought to the Citadel. Not only that, but to the lab where Clemencia had been attacked. So, yay. There's a small clinic set up there, so it leaves one to wonder, how frequently do accidents in the lab happen? I imagine very frequently, because I'm pretty sure it's obvious by now that Gaul does not care about people's well-beings or their safety, so she's just lets horrible things happen to them all the time, probably. So Coriolanus, this is quite notable, he doesn't tell the medics about his potential concussion because he doesn't want to risk being readmitted to the hospital. And he hates being there, feeling vulnerable and trapped. And honestly, I can't blame him. He just went through something really freaking traumatic, and he's back somewhere where he saw a friend attacked. So all in all, not good for his mental state. Like that alone, that night alone, and everything that's been happening has me kind of understanding like why he's so messed up in the future. It doesn't excuse his actions, but still I can understand like how he ended up getting so messed up after that one incident, because I doubt he's gone to therapy since then. Like, highly doubt it. But I don't know, it also kind of just makes him more evil as well, because when he's president, because he's been in the arena. He knows what it's like for the tributes firsthand, and he still is willing to just constantly let kids go through that. So I feel bad for you, Coriolanus, but also F you. Anyway, Sejanus leaves, likely to go home, and Coriolanus considers slipping away, but instinctively knows he's expected to stay. And soon Gaul shows up, making the night even more traumatizing for Corio. So I'm going to read the conversation they have from the bottom of page 241 to page 243, because this is a really important conversation in the book, and it's hard to just sum everything up. Alright, so Gaul shows up, and she tells Coriolanus, "I started out as a medical doctor, you know, obstetrics." How awful, Coriolanus thought, to have you be the first person in the world a baby sees. "Wasn't really for me," said Dr. Gaul. "Parents always want reassurances you can't give, about the futures their children face. How could I possibly know what they'd encounter? Like you tonight. Who would have imagined Crassus Snow's darling baby boy fighting for his life in the capital arena? Not him, for one." Coriolanus didn't know how to respond. He could barely remember his father, let alone divine his imaginings. "What was it like in the arena?" asked Dr. Gaul. "Terrifying," said Snow flatly. "It's designed to be." She checked his pupils, shining a light into each of his eyes. What about the tributes? The light hurt his head. What about them? Dr. Gaul moved on to his stitches. What did you think of them, now that their chains have been removed, now that they've tried to kill you? Because it was of no benefit to them, your death. You're not the competition. It was true. They'd been close enough to recognize him, but they'd hunted down him and Sejanus. Sejanus, who treated the tributes so well, fed them, defended them, giving them last rites, even though they could have used that opportunity to kill one another. I think I underestimated how much they hate us, said Coriolanus. And when you realized that, what was your response? She asked. He thought back to Bobbin, to the escape, to the tribute's bloodlust even after he'd cleared the bars. I wanted them dead. I wanted every one of them dead. Dr. Gaul nodded. Well, mission accomplished with that little one from 8. You beat him to a pulp. Have to make up some story for that buffoon Flickerman to tell in the morning. But what a wonderful opportunity for you. Transformative. Was it? Coriolanus remembered the sickening thuds of his board against Bobbin. So he had what? Murdered the boy? No, not that. It was an open and shut case of self-defense. But what then? He had killed him, certainly. There would never be any erasing that, no regaining that innocence. He had taken human life. Wasn't it? More than I could have hoped. I needed you to get Sejanus out of the arena, of course, but I wanted you to taste that as well, she said. Even if it killed me? Asked Coriolanus. Without the threat of death, it wouldn't have been much of a lesson, said Dr. Gaul. What happened in the arena? That's humanity undressed. The tributes, and you too. How quickly civilization disappears. All your fine manners, education, family background, everything you pride yourself on, stripped away in the blink of an eye, revealing everything you actually are. A boy with a club who beats another boy to death. That's mankind in its natural state. The idea laid out as such shocked him, but he attempted a laugh. Are we really as bad as all that? I would say yes, absolutely, but it's a matter of personal opinion. Dr. Gaul pulled a roll of gauze from the pocket of her lab coat. What do you think? I think I wouldn't have beaten anyone to death if you hadn't stuck me in that arena, he retorted. You can blame it on the circumstances, the environment, but you made the choices you made, no one else. It's a lot to take in all at once, but it's essential that you make an effort to answer that question. Who are human beings? Because who we are determines the type of governing we need. Later on, I hope you can reflect and be honest with yourself about what you learned tonight. Dr. Gaul began to wrap his wound in a gauze. And a few stitches on your arm is a cheap price to pay for it. So I think that's some of Suzanne's best writing. And it's messed up. So, Suzanne has also said in interviews that the ideas from the philosophers Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, I probably butchered that, don't mind me. So those ideas helped inspire her work, especially for Ballad. So she said in interviews that Gaul is inspired from the ideas of Hobbes, because she clearly passes those on to Coriolanus. Hobbes basically believed that humans are nasty creatures and, we need powerful authority to rule and control us, which, she just laid out when she said that humanity undressed is, wild and murderous, and hence why we need to be controlled. Locke has a much kinder view. He believes that, people living together according to reason, is our state of nature, and Suzanne said that she wrote Sejanus and Lucy Gray to line up with Locke's ideas more. And then the third one, Rousseau, oh my god, I should have looked up how to pronounce it beforehand. I'm so sorry, guys. But he believed that people in the state of nature were motivated by a naturally good form of self-love, but entering society turns that into more destructive self-love that depends on others' approval. And those ideas are sprinkled throughout the Covey in this book, who we still have not yet met. But I also think that could apply to the capital, especially by Katniss's time, because everyone, from what we can tell, is focused on their image and how they can impress others. Anyway, Coriolanus then goes on to say that Gaul is the one who made a student of hers go into the arena and kill someone. So what did that make her? And she doesn't really answer the question, but she doesn't seem bothered by the idea at all. And I have to wonder, like, what happened in her life that made Gaul this way? Like, I remember when I first read the trilogy, I thought Snow was the most evil character, but now that we've met Gaul, it makes sense. Like, no wonder he's messed up. So I'm not sure if I would want to know who messed Gaul up, but it's almost like a never-ending circle of corrupt, powerful people. So anyway, Gaul tells Coriolanus that she and Highbottom read his essay, and she really liked the end bit about control, because again, goes back to Hobb. Because Hobb believed mankind needs to be controlled by one central power. That's Coriolanus in a nutshell. So Gaul assigns him another essay to elaborate on the part about control and tells him to take his time on it. And another important thing she says on page 244. So Coriolanus says that, without control, chaos happens. And he's like, what else is there to say? And then Dr. Gaul goes on to say, oh, a good deal, I think. Start with that, chaos. No control, no law, no government at all. Like being in the arena. Where do we go from there? What sort of agreement is necessary if we're to live in peace? What sort of social contract is required for survival? She removed the drip from his arm. We'll need you back in a couple of days to check those stitches. Until then, I would keep the night's events to yourself. Better get home and catch a few hours of sleep. Remarkably, your tribute still needs you. Right, so Coriolanus goes home after that, and thankfully for him, Mrs. Plinth sent the car back to give him a ride home. And Tigris naturally stayed up waiting for him, and she's wearing her mother's fur coat, which for her is like a security blanket, the same way that the compact is for Corio. And Tigris pretty much guesses right away that Coriolanus was sent into the arena because she's not dumb. And she knows Dr. Gaul is crazy, so she can guess something that insane happened. And which works out for Coriolanus because Gaul told him, not to say anything to anyone about what happened that night. And he didn't say anything to anyone. Tigris figured it out because she's a smart cookie. And now, I don't know, things feel more dire because Coriolanus can really understand, Lucy Gray's circumstances even better, and he's more on edge. And the next morning, he's woken up by the Grand Mam singing the national anthem, as she does every morning. He packs an overnight bag in case he and the other mentors have to stay at the academy overnight. And when he looks into the mirror, he sees his wounds and decides to claim that he had a bike accident as a cover story. Tigris gives him the rolls that Mrs. Plinth left him the previous night and gives him tokens so he can take the trolley. At this point, Coriolanus has kind of decided he needs to find a way to distance himself from the Plinths, although the downside would be losing Mrs. Plinth's cooking. When he gets to Heavensby Hall, he sees Juno Phipps, who is Bobbin's mentor, and it gets him wondering how they'll reveal Bobbin's death, because, it happened in a way the Capitol wouldn't want to be public knowledge. He joins Festus and Lysistrata. Festus grumbles at being hungry, so Corio gives him the extra roll. He tells them the cover story about falling off his bike. Lysistrata recommends cream for his face so he can prevent infection. They see the arena on camera. Nothing appears to have changed other than Marcus's body being moved. And then Lucky comes on screen and greets everyone. And then the camera reveals Bobbin's body. Coriolanus is a bit horrified when he sees it because he can't quite believe that he did that. And he's almost tempted to leave the room so he doesn't have to face how horrible that is, but then decides against it because he doesn't want to be like Sejanus. Again, if we were all of us were a little bit more like Sejanus, the world would be a better place, but that's just my opinion. Lucky says that this is a reason to celebrate because now they've reached the halfway point. 12 down, 12 to go. Juno is not happy and wants to see footage of the previous night because she expects foul play. And Coriolanus is very uncomfortable with the idea of that footage being out there, and he's not even quite sure how to articulate how he feels about the whole thing or why he feels so uncomfortable. though my personal theory is that he hates how out of control he was in that moment, because like Gaul said, very quickly, like, you know, his like civilized manners and everything disappeared, and he became almost as quote unquote savage as he would imagine the people from the districts being, or that's how he was brought up to believe they were. And because he likes to be the person that's like cool, calm, and collective during a crisis, and he wasn't that in the arena. And during the chaotic aftermath of Arachne's death, he tries really hard to keep his fear and vulnerability a private thing. So the footage of him being scared and murderous, again, not cool, calm, and collected, is kind of a nightmare for him. Lepidus doesn't linger too long with Juno because she's being a sore loser. And then Lucky reveals that Mr. Plinth and Sejanus are in the studio with him. So throughout this whole interview, Sejanus and his father, like, barely look at each other. And I don't know, I feel like that's a good, like, visual representation of their relationship. And Sejanus also seems a little bit out of it. And again, I don't blame him. He's also emotionally scarred from the night before. And when Lucky asks Sejanus about, you know, his injuries, he also claims a bike accident, which frustrates Coriolanus because, you know, both of them claiming to be in quote-unquote like bike accidents within the same like 12 hours is suspicious. So Sejanus and Mr. Plinth then announced the Plinth Prize, which means that whichever tribute wins the games, their mentor would win a full-ride scholarship to the university. This is obviously a huge deal for Coriolanus because this means that if he were to win, then Gaul and Highbottom would have no say over it, so they can't take it away from him. So another good reason to keep Lucy Gray alive. Coriolanus then really understands what Sejanus means by let the buying begin, because, you know, such a generous prize would overshadow Sejanus's reckless stunt from the night before. And Coriolanus even briefly wonders like what Mr. Plinth would pay for Corior to stay silent about the whole thing. Anyway, meanwhile in the arena, Coral and Mizzen are seen. Festus and Persephone are talking strategy and delivering food to their tributes. And Coriolanus notes that Festus is developing a crush on Persephone. He then wonders if he should tell his friend that his crush is a cannibal because, don't forget, Persephone's father is the one who young Chorus saw take a woman's leg to eat, and we are reminded of this every time Persephone makes an appearance. Why? Why do I have to be reminded of this? So after lunch, the seats are rearranged. Only the mentors who still have tributes in the games have seats in the mentor section, which is kind of like a weird twisted game of musical chairs. Livia is, of course, pissed because now she has to sit with the rest of the audience and not appear special, quote unquote. But now it's also hard for Coriolanus to put distance between himself and Clementia, who keeps glaring at him. So awkward. So the day drags on. Lysistrata has to nudge Corio awake a couple times because he's obviously exhausted from the night before. Lucy Gray and Jessup are still hidden, which is concerning because he and Lysistrata want to send them food. The girl from 5 makes an appearance. Lucky can't find her name and just manages to connect her to her mentor, Iphigenia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So Iphigenia Moss, who, by the way, clearly has an eating disorder, because she keeps like giving food to her classmates, and she once told Coriolanus that not eating was the only revenge she can get on her father. So yikes, messed up family right there. Then again, just about everything in this book is messed up. So if Iphigenia starts sending food to her tribute, when Coral, Mizzen, and Tanner appear from the tunnels, they briefly chase the girl from 5, surround her, and then Coral kills her by spearing a Triton through the throat. Then, just as the student body is about to be dismissed for the day, Lucy Gray appears. Yay! Except she's running. Lysistrata asks where Jessup is. Then he comes staggering out of the tunnel, and at first Coriolanus thinks Jessup is wounded, but then he realizes that he's ill, not hurt, and then it becomes very clear that he has rabies. And that's where the chapter ends. Next week, I will be in emotional agony because, spoiler alert, I'm gonna have to relive Jessup's death again. Why? So, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and my horrible pronunciation of some words. I can't talk today. Don't forget to follow, subscribe so you get notified when I post new episodes. Next week, we will be talking about chapters 17 to 20, and we will be wrapping up part 2. Woo! I can't believe we're going to be done with part 2 already. If you want to share your thoughts with me, feel free to message me on Instagram at bookishbabbles_podcast, or you can email me at bookishbabbles1618@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day, night, whenever you're listening. Bye!